I'm still coming to terms with what greatness I can put forth into the world to honor her and to honor my parents for their sacrifice in their lives to give me my life, to give me my opportunity to be creative, to give me my opportunity to hone my skills. I owe them. I owe them for their sacrifice. And I choose to now leave a legacy that honors the time they took, particularly my mom, in nurturing me and believing in me against all odds that I could be great in my lifetime. It's all for her. Welcome to Robert Young's Bright, Famed, Shining, the podcast. And we're back with another artist proof. I missed you guys. Quite happy to be recording. I'm finding so much joy in this process. I do hope you've been enjoying the daily inspirations from the book. And I do hope they've been moving and impacting you, and happy to be here with a longer form version of the podcast, the episode. And this episode, this artist proof that we'll be sharing today is a flashback. We'll call it Interview 2016. I have the great and awesome opportunity through this podcast to engage and study and research and dive deep into other podcasts and philosophies and ideas and thoughts. And because my desire is that this is a place where creativity meets wellness, I thought it would be important in this early stage to bring you back. In September of 2016, I recorded an interview. That interview was, I think, the first uncut long-form interview I had done since after the interview I had done the morning after burying my mother. And so it was about 14 months after the unexpected passing of my mother. And I had the opportunity to sit down and have one of my dear friends, also a subject of one of my projects, ask me open questions. And I answered them earnestly and honestly as I could. And as we grow in this podcast and in this process of sharing wellness, happiness, joy, suffering, and all as it pertains to moving within the creative industries, it's important that I share as much as I can openly about myself so that you can feel comfortable in this process. My goal is that this experience heals not only myself, but through the sharing of my experiences, those that are listening. So I really want to thank you for tuning in. And if you like what you hear, of course, subscribe, share with a friend, continue to help us to expand and be a part of this wonderful podcast community that's filled with upliftment. You could find it in this space. Tune in, search around in all the different podcast channels. You will find magic there. This is definitely a special scenario. So as we move forward, as always, before we begin, there are two things, one of which is to get ourselves settled, and the second which is for me to read from you from Daily Inspiration. So first of which, let's put our hands, palms down on our legs, and we're just going to take 4 deep breaths. When you're alone, you could extend this maybe to 8. It's completely up to you. In fact, I'm learning that this process that I've always been doing to take deep breaths to set intention and reset myself apparently are part of settling the mind from a perspective of neuroscience. And we'll get to that later in another episode when I start to share all of my favorite podcasts that I've been listening to. But for now, palms down on the thighs, and we'll just catch 4 breaths to get ourselves reset and ready for this episode. So here we go. Beautiful. So as you know, I've been reading from Daily Inspiration for you all every day. I'm going to actually pick up the original copy of the book that I designed in Medellin, Colombia. All the writing is the same. I redesigned it, of course, when I returned to the U.S. To make it accessible to everyone so that it could be available on Amazon. And that's this copy that you see me reading from every day right now, or hear me reading from every day, depending on how you're ingesting the podcast. Right now, I'm just going to flip to a page, as always, just randomly see what comes up and see where we end up. Let's do it. Beautiful. I love this photo I took in, I think I was in Hong Kong. Yeah. Here we go. It is time to sacrifice. Sacrifice vanity. Sacrifice ego. Sacrifice fear, sacrifice pain, sacrifice hatred, sacrifice ignorance, sacrifice illusion, sacrifice deceit, sacrifice suffering, and save yourself. Ashe. I want you to enjoy this interview. I hope that I'm able to share the heart of who I am in this upcoming interview from 2016. But also, please tune in to the end. At the end, I'll be back, and there I will be asking a very special question about something I said in that interview from 2016. And the first person to be able to answer it correctly, I will be sending you a copy of Daily Inspiration, a signed copy of the book, directly to you. So please enjoy. And without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Robert Young's Bright Fame Shining, the podcast, An Artist Proof, and this beautiful step into the past from 2016, the Uncut Interview. Thank you. We'll see you on the other side.
Why did you decide you wanted to pursue a career in the arts and entertainment industry?
When I was a kid, I worked at a store called Music World. And Music World was a national chain of stores that sold music, obviously. CDs and tapes. Yes, tapes. And I'll never forget, I went in on a holiday and, they were hiring and I got this job. And I was very excited because I was the stock clerk. And I got to identify all the music that was coming in from all different walks of life. And I remember I had this moment, I was really proud of myself, I had gone out to the front. One of the guys were on break. One guy called in sick, so they asked me to go out on the floor. And I went out on the floor to help with sales. It was holidays, busy time. And this woman came in with their child, and she's like, "Oh my God, I have to find this CD. Do you know anything? I need to find children's classical." And I remember saying to myself, yeah, no problem. Susan Hammond, follow me right over here, miss. Because I knew it was part of the process of being the stock clerk. I dealt with all the inventory coming in. I had to categorize it. I had to create the labels, and I had to put them out on the floor. So I knew from that experience, that learning, training experience, I quickly learned how information transitions and helps you in other areas. So that was a great experience. And then the end of the holiday came around, and I got called into the manager's office. He's like, "Well, Robert, it's great having you here, but we're afraid you've been a bit lacking in your skills and haven't learned much about the music that we're carrying in the store, so we're going to have to let you go." And I lost it. I was like, "Are you crazy? Susan Hammond, that." And two things happened through that experience. I learned very much that I was not terribly interested in working with or for people that didn't appreciate me as a person and my efforts, my desire to really do great at my job. I didn't want to be around people that didn't recognize that in other people. And one of the places that it kind of was revealed to me that I could feel this great appreciation from people was in the arts, where there was a space for me where the arts were always meant to communicate an idea, to answer a question. And in my case, it was to answer problems, fixing problems. And so I was really excited because I think that was my last job I had while I was in high school. And I graduated, and that was it. I went straight into the workforce in terms of starting my own company. And I was excited. The first thing I started in was in poetry, in the arts, and it was amazing.
Out of all the different mediums of art and communication, which one would you say that you've mastered and is your go-to in terms of expressing yourself?
I think that I have done a great job at being teaching myself how to use different mediums and different tools. But I think the only element that I've mastered, I think, or feel like I'm good at and intend to continue to master, because you can always keep learning, is communication. I'm driven by communication. When I used to ask my mom about certain things about how I was when I was a kid, because I wanted to understand what my nature was. You know, you're grown and you become who you are by nature and by nurture, by who your elemental essence is and your experiences and what you learn and how you deal with them. Those two elements come together to make you who you are. But I was always wanted to be in touch with, well, who was I before I was conscious of thinking about who I was? And my mom would always say, you always wanted to be understood. You would say the same thing 5 million times until you were sure somebody got the point. And I was like, wow. And I thought about, well, you wonder, someone asked me once, how do you do all these different things? Filmmaking and literature and writing, poetry, and photography, like how do you find yourself in that space? And it's because my number one thing is communicating, and any means of any tool that I could possibly use to communicate ideas that solve problems, I'm gonna figure out how to use it. I never knew how to use a camera. I figured out how to use it. I never knew how to edit film projects. I figured out how to use it. And so the other day I was teaching students a storytelling course, video storytelling. And what I told them is that I'm not going to give you projects that are my ideas. I want you to think of great ideas of your own that you would like to see come to life. And when I told them that, I said, the reason I'm doing that is because if you love what you're doing, you will figure out how. You will always figure out the how. And that's been my experience through my whole life, is that I've learned to master the desire to figure out how.
Is there any other field or industry that you could see yourself pursuing other than the career you're in now?
I think interior design. I discovered the other day that I'm in love with tangible things. You know, for 5 seconds, I thought to myself, oh man, you know, what else in my life would I like to do if I wasn't in the arts? If I wasn't in communication? I'm like, oh, you know, advertising. But then I realized advertising, you know, is a world of ideating, and then you outsource the execution. And even in the outsourcing the execution, the final product is still is in a digital realm in this day and age, you know. I'm excited about things you can touch, tangible items. It's what I love about photography, that you could print something and touch it. You could have an idea, you could put your camera to an idea, photograph that idea, print that idea, and someone can have a personal experience with an exchange with it. It's funny because in film, although you can't touch it, you can touch the organic film that runs through the camera, as it were. But film is the only other element I know that creates that kind of tangible experience, that kind of something you keep forever in your life, that speaks to you, communicates with you on such a level. But I really love tangible things. I think, wow, man, interior design or building, continuing to build incredible installations, physical installations, like we did with the faces in Commerce Court, and creating experience that people walk and travel through. Tangible things, man. I think my heart and my passion and my compassion I got from my mom. But I think my love of tangible things I got from my dad. He was a builder, a master craftsman in woodworking and creating furniture. So any ideas that he ever sketched up were, all the furniture in our house my father had made. And much of it I had been forced to sand. And so, yeah, I'm in love with the tangible.
Would you say you have a specific style in your work, like a signature style?
Well, I look at, in my life, I'm very lucky that I've had the opportunity to really focus on my craft. And so I look at things that I consider my signature work, and I look at what they do. So I look at a script I wrote for a film called For Art's Sake. I look at that in terms of my writing signature work. I look at the faces, and I look at that as my photography signature work. And what I find is common thread is this what I call the transitioning through the chrysalis. This space where something was one thing, and life and circumstances are forcing it to see its greater self. And in order to be its greater self, it has to go through this process of transformation, i.e. the chrysalis. And so, for me, that's what I think is seen in my work. I think when you can see the inspiration on the face of Haiti, yet understand the trials and tribulations of the nation, you see where there's that conversation between the difficult and the uncomfortable, and then the peace and the inspiration and the contentment. But you've got to travel through this fire to get to the other side. And For Art's Sake, it's about a painter who becomes paralyzed, and this journey of seeing life as either a cup half full or a cup half empty. It shows up in everything. This the yin and the yang, as they say, in all of my work. But I think the one thing that I am excited about, that I've seen come to life, is that it's always an attempt to be uplifting. It's always an attempt to be inspiring. I am not a fan of perpetrating the fascination of abomination. I am very much a fan of what's beautiful in people and beautiful in the world, and can look at a very, very, very ugly thing and do my best to transform it and see, not even transform it, but recognize the beauty in it and try to have whatever communication tools are at my disposal, expose it. I think that is evident in all the work that I do.
You've obviously accomplished a lot in your work What do you aspire to become?
Despite the travel around the world and the work and the blessing of what my life has been in terms of creativity, I aspire to be content. You know, it's not a thing on the planet that would make me happy other than continuing to be able to live in the space between the question and the answer. That creative space of solving a problem with tools for communication, designing, curating my life, and being able to do it in a manner that answers my nature, which is to always grow and uplift others, but doing it in a manner that gives me peace every day. To find a space where every single morning I got up and could feel that I was in for a day filled with that kind of a contentment. Oh, that is such a dream.
Is there an artist in the industry, or that ever was, living or dead, that whose aesthetic and style influence your work, and if it hasn't influenced your work, that you admire?
It's funny. I have a weird way of dealing with influences. This is from when I was a child. My mentors and the people I looked up to weren't human beings. They were cats. I was fascinated, and I don't mean domestic cats. I'm referring to wild animals, tigers, lions, mountain lions. I was fascinated. I used to watch National Geographic and these shows, and I'd be fascinated with how the pride managed itself, the different roles that they played. What would happen if a cub was hurt, or if the mother lion was hurt, or how much land that they would try to acquire just enough to have enough to eat and get through the season. I was always amazed that the rules were so perfectly set, and that it was never taking more than you needed. You know, I really loved that. So I found that as I grew up, when I started to look at the areas of work that I was involved in, I really didn't like looking at other people. So in that field, so if it was a poet, you know, I had respect for Muta Baruka and Gil Scott-Heron and the last poets. But I was really lucky because growing up in Toronto, we really didn't have access as fundamentally as you would, because it wasn't pop culture. So I got to develop my style as a poet from my own voice, from how I saw my life and my stories and what answers I wanted to create from the problems that were around me growing up in Jane and Finch. And I think that continued to translate throughout my career. When I began as an editor, I mean, I'd watched music videos and films before, but I never even thought about the process of how people take pieces of pictures and put them together and curate, you know, a 3-minute music video or a 30-second commercial or a 2-hour film. I never thought about how that happened. I don't think any of us do. And then I was in the industry, working in the industry, and I'd always remember someone would call me and say, "We have this project, you know, we didn't like how the edit went. We would love you to put your spin on it." And I would say, "Okay, sure, send me the project." And they're like, "Well, we're going to send you what was already done." And I would say, "No, I never wanted to see what was already done. I wanted to know what they wanted from the project. And then I would try to use my talents to deliver what it is that they asked for, what it is that their mission was from the footage." And I continued to do that. So when I moved into the arts, I really wasn't looking at what other people were doing. I was really just trying to continue to deal with my common thread, which was communicating an idea and learning the tools to communicate that idea. But I will say this, I've always been incredibly appreciative of the work of Basquiat and his ability to transform people's ideas of what was not an art form in people's minds, and in terms of graffiti, and transforming himself and his work into a space that became one of the greatest fine artists that ever lived. I was excited by that. I'm still excited by that. But in terms of my influences, I think I'm more influenced by state of mind. I think I've watched incredible interviews with Jim Carrey at points in his career where he talked about a sense of enlightenment, a sense of like a drivenness to identify what he wanted, visions, what he wanted for his life, and seeing those come to life. I think inspirational people inspire me as a creative person as opposed to artists alone. So artists do inspire me. But the greater inspiration comes from people that live their life in an inspirational way and overcome tragedy to be at peace. I think those type of people are the people that drive me as an artist.
What's the best advice you've ever been given?
Edward James Olmos. I was a young actor and I was in a film with Edward James Olmos and Vincent D'Onofrio that was filming in the subway. It was called The Taking of Pelham 123. It was the first remake. There was a remake after that with Denzel Washington and John Travolta, but this was the first remake of the old classic. And I said, Mr. Olmos, I'm just curious, what would you tell a young guy like me who's coming up in this business? I gave the whole speech. And he said, the only actors I ever know that never made it in this industry are the ones that stopped trying. And I never forgot that. I never forgot that. The only ones who never made it are the ones who stopped trying. So, yeah, that was probably the best advice I ever got.
What would you tell a younger version of you starting out in the industry?
Man, you have to do what you love. You know, you hear it sounds cliche, but you have to do what you love. Not what someone else says to do, and not what someone else thinks you're good at, but what you love. Because life has a way of throwing very interesting obstacles in front of you. And if you're not doing something that you love, it is almost impossible to stick to it, to be successful. And when I say successful, I'm not talking about money. I'm not talking about prestige, but I'm talking about happy. You have to be doing what you love to find happiness in your life. Otherwise, you could be rich beyond anyone's wildest dreams and drive the fastest car and live the fastest life and be a miserable person. You have to love what you do. And I mean it. There's not a bone in my body that's joking about how important this is. You have to do what you love.
Similar question. Define success.
You can define success in many ways. Some people will take the time to define success by what it's not. I define success as contentment. That in whatever you're doing, you are content. And that contentment is coming from the fact that you are logically and knowledgeably doing what you were destined to do. You've identified your gifts. You've identified what's special about you. And you've identified how you can have an exchange between yourself and someone else. And in that exchange, everyone wins. When you can have contentment in yourself, through that experience of exchange, that benefits someone else and benefits you simultaneously, to me, that's success. To me, you have arrived. I'm still looking.
I know where this. Was there a moment in your life, a specific moment that triggered? Was there a specific moment that triggered a shift in the direction in which your life was going?
There's a few. I think the two greatest moments of my life that triggered shifts, I won't speak on whether the shifts were positive or negative. They're just part of the flow of existence, but they were huge. It was my father passed away. The concept of mortality hit me like a brick. And particularly because I had an incredibly close relationship with my mom. And my mom and dad were together my whole life. And from the day my father passed away, I feared losing my mom. Like, his passing away made death real. And it was, up until that point, it just wasn't real for me. And the battle of trying to understand what life is about began. And by that time, I was a grown man. I was living in Los Angeles. It was as if I was a child again. And it's ironic because when my father passed away, one thing I did feel on the other side of the fence was that I was a man now. Now, I didn't clearly feel, I thought I was a man. But when he passed away, it was clear, you are a man now. And part of that, being a man, meant being responsible. And I had been a pretty responsible person up until that point, but the weight of responsibility to me had grown exponentially. And I don't know, I think I might have, in some cases, I think I might have been stunted by that weight. But I produced some very young world faces. The Faces collection was born out of that pain. Traveling to Sierra Leone and shooting a documentary was born out of that need to resolve the question of mortality. Hong Kong, Beijing, Shanghai, Singapore, Romania, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Barbados, Trinidad. All of my travels was constantly on a mission of meeting people, engaging people, and learning a little bit more about humanity, one person at a time, from all these people around the world, to try to figure out, what it's all about. But none of it could have prepared me for the day that my mom passed away. 2 weeks to the day of the opening of the exhibition of Faces in Toronto for the Pan Am Games. It was her birthday. Opened on her birthday, and 2 weeks later I came home and I found her. And I can talk about it calmly now, but it was a train wreck. It was a train wreck. And I'm still coming to terms with what greatness I can put forth into the world to honor her and to honor my parents for their sacrifice in their lives to give me my life, to give me my opportunity to be creative, to give me my opportunity to hone my skills. I owe them. I owe them for their sacrifice. And I choose to now leave a legacy that honors the time they took, particularly my mom, in nurturing me and believing in me against all odds that I could be great in my lifetime. It's all for her.
Pretty cool. I know you've taught, you've been teaching. Can you share with us your thoughts on the new generation of artists in Toronto?
I think Toronto, and I think around the world, I think I'm in one way excited about the new generation, and the other way I'm very scared. I find that the new generation sees things are very disposable for them. I liken it to LA. So if you've ever been to LA, there's a very interesting thing that happens when you're in LA. So when you're in LA, one of the scary things about LA is that a lot of the people are transplants. They're not from Los Angeles. They arrive in Los Angeles, and years ago, you'd know LA to be this way. So you'd go and you'd see it. Everyone's always got their perfect outfit on, and you know, they go into the supermarket, they've got the perfect outfit on. They go to the cafe. And everyone has this perfect way of being because they're on the brink of being discovered, right? Because they'd read stories about a guy that was discovered who worked at a car wash, and a producer walked up to him and said, "You look like the guy I need for my next film." And next thing you know, the guy becomes like Brad Pitt or something. Like it's this weird scenario. So what had happened in LA that I found was that a lot of people just weren't their authentic selves day to day. And most of them were transplants. There were people that come to LA, people that were born and raised in LA, that were normal. And anyone could tell you that understands Hollywood. I find that social media is a big giant LA. I find that it's created a space where people are not their authentic selves and putting every element of aspect of their life out in the forefront in the hopes that someone's going to see it and go, "You're a star, come with me." And I think that destroys authenticity. I think it destroys creativity. People start to post certain types of things, for example, based on what they see someone else earning likes for. But at the same time, the digital realm has made space for huge leaps in terms of the creative process. People that are willing to break the rules and go left of center because the technology is allowing them the space to do that. So it's a very, very difficult catch-22. I just hope people keep coming back to their truth. Like, where are they in their art? Where are they in their creative process? When I say they, they're the I am, right? Where is their essence in it? Because when their essence is in it, then it will always be original, because no one can be a better you than you. So I hope people keep leaning back to themselves and seeing the value in themselves, because otherwise they'll be left very empty inside when they become a little older and not cute enough for selfies.
If there was a theme song for your life, what would it be?
Oh man, a theme song. I have no idea. That's a really good question. It's likely an instrumental. It's likely an instrumental. It'll evolve and change, and the story that it will tell me will be different depending on the day and the mood and the light and the sun and whether there's a full moon out. I think it's likely a classical song. It has ebbs and flows. Yeah.
Can you speak a little bit about what's to come for you in terms of work and life in general?
I am really excited that in my life I am starting to be surrounded by people who believe in my greater mission. Yes, in myself, but in what I'm supposed to be doing in the world, and are providing a space of support. I spent most of my career building everything up from scratch. And yes, I work with people in different realms, but in terms of a fully supportive team or perspective, that hasn't always been my reality. I have found my way through. Like I said, my mission is always to communicate, so I will find a way. But I'm really excited about the types of partnerships, relationships, and collaborations that are happening in my life currently. And I'm excited about being able to let go of some of the responsibilities that a career artist has. I just want to create, I'm not particularly interested in the business of promoting myself or social media, sometimes it's fun, to be honest. I work out, I love working out, I love seeing other people's workout videos, it's inspirational. For my personal life, it's fun. But in terms of my career, I just want to create. I just want to continue to build answers to questions, turn tragedy to triumph, illuminate areas that are unseen and can inspire. I just want to do that. And to be surrounded by a strong formation of people and institutions that will support me in that endeavor is the most exciting thing I see in the future for me. And I'm excited to see what's going to come of it.
Thank you.
Welcome back. And I do hope you feel that you know me a little bit better. It's been a great pleasure sharing this with you, as I will many, many wonderful hidden tidbits from my 30 years in the creative industries and my experiences. I'm so excited to be able to share all this stuff with you guys. I don't think you even have any idea how much this means to me. But in the meanwhile, let's get to that question. For the person that will win a signed copy of Daily Inspiration sent to your house, here's the question. All you have to do is log on to IG and follow at Bright Famed Shining and send us a message. Here's the question. What artist do I consider an influence? Now, this is a very important question because we have such a special episode coming up soon. And I don't want to spoil it and surprise you early, but if you can guess the answer to that, there's a gift in it for you. First person to log on to IG, follow at Bright Fame Shining, and go ahead and tell me who is an artistic influence of mine, someone I highly respect. And this copy will be signed in your mailbox shortly. Thank you once again for tuning in to Robert Young's Bright Famed Shining, the podcast where creativity meets wellness. Ashe.